Hey guys, my name is Jody Agard, and I'm a certified life coach and motivational speaker and a writer. So I didn't just wake up one day and just say, "Oh, I think I want to become a life coach." No, life kind of just handed it to me. So let me just rewind a little bit and tell you a little bit about my background and a little bit about my childhood too. So my parents actually met when they were 13, and they became the best of friends, and then later married. And I would say I had a really awesome childhood. I was tucked in at night. I was told that I was loved. We went on family summer vacations. We went to church. We had family dinners, all the good stuff that a girl could really ever want. And then when I was 13 years old, and just before my parents' 18th wedding anniversary, they separated, which at the time I was a huge fan of my dad, and my dad and I were very close, and I was really just the epitome of a daddy's little girl. And so during their separation, my dad and I became exceptionally close, and we would go to Connecticut to go see his family in the summertime, and I would drag my girlfriends on the weekends to go hang out with him at his house, and we'd go to the movies and the mall and all the girly kind of stuff that we did. So during that 2-year separation, we became really close. And then when I was 15 years old, as I was getting ready to go to gymnastics class, I was sitting in front of my big long mirror in my awesome pink bedroom, and I was trying to put my hair up in a bun, and I hear my mom come from the bottom of the steps, and she's asking my brother and I to come downstairs and talk to her. And I thought it was kind of weird that, she was home kind of early. She's a nurse, and she worked from 9 to 5, and this was like 3 o'clock in the afternoon. But I didn't really think much of it, so I just kind of blew it off. And we were like, yeah, we'll be down in a minute. And after like the third attempt, she finally just basically demanded that my brother and I come down. So annoyed and just anxious to get it over with, my brother and I came flying down the steps, and as I turned the corner into the dining room, there I saw my mom standing by the kitchen counter with a look on her face that I've never seen before. And I knew something terrible had gone wrong. And so when we approached her, she just said, "It's your father." And before I could even think about what I was saying, the words, "He committed suicide, didn't he?" came flying out of my mouth. And although I had said the words, I was absolutely, utterly unprepared for her confirmation that my dad did in fact take his own life. So needless to say, my entire world, everything that I had known and loved for those 15 years were just shattered into a million different pieces. My world really crumbled. And basically, I ended up crying myself to sleep every night for 5 years. I was very, very lost, and my dad didn't leave a suicide note. So I had a lot of unanswered questions, and I wanted answers. And it kind of, to be honest with you, it kind of pissed me off that he didn't leave me a note, because he was constantly writing in these journals that he had. And I would see him just jot down some things at lunch and stuff. And so I never really understood why he didn't leave a suicide note. So then fast forward to 10 years later, on my 25th birthday, my mom had given me what I thought was the best gift ever. It was my dad's 5 journals that he had written in during that 2-year separation. And so I thought, oh, finally, all these answers. Everything I've ever wanted, I can finally get the closure and the peace, and I can have some answers to my questions that I've had, because I had one burning question, and that was just why? Why? Why did he take his own life? And why in the world would he want to do that when he was surrounded by so much love? And my dad was a very happy, outgoing, gentle, amazing soul. So I was just really confused. So when I got these journals, I thought, oh, perfect. These are all my answers. And so I dissected his journals. Literally, I just went through them. But what ended up happening was that I ended up using them as a crutch. And so I would take them out anytime that I would have an argument with a boyfriend, or I had a bad day at work, or on my dad's birthday, or for Christmas time, or Thanksgiving, or whatever. I just decided that I would take these journals out. And although that they made me cry, somehow they always made me feel better. And I had a connection, I felt, with my dad. And I suppose, that was probably just me trying to fill the void that I was feeling for all those years. So I dissected and went through these journals hundreds and thousands of times. And so But I honestly, I had no answers still. I still didn't have very many answers, and I was still lost. Until one night, about 5 years ago, almost 5 years ago, I was sitting on the lanai in one of those desperate modes. And actually, for the first time, I was expressing my anger and my frustration out loud. And I was honestly like raising my fist to God, and I was yelling at my dad, and I was like, "How come you didn't leave me suicide note?" And da da da. And I was just going on and on and on. And tears, mascara was strolling down my face, the whole nine. It was like a movie. And in that moment, what ended up happening was I ended up realizing that I wasn't lacking a suicide note. I was just failing to see the gift in his journals. Here I was holding on to this stereotypical suicide note that I should have, that all suicide survivors have, or so I thought. But I didn't have one. And so I was failing to see that here are his 5 journals with his raw feelings, his deep emotions, his regrets, his resentments, his worries, his fears. These are his real raw feelings, not a suicide note that was, felt like it was obligated to be written to his family. So then from that, I started crying harder because it was such a release. And I literally had felt that somebody had just come and wiped my little eyeballs, and I could see really, really clearly. And I had so much clarity around my dad's suicide and just life and myself and all of those things. So I started connecting the dots, and I said, all right, well, if that's the case, these are a gift. Well, how can I get more out of them? Because I've read them, like I said, hundreds of other times. So how could I get more out of them? And what I noticed was that I was having to stop every word or every other word because of his penmanship, and he had kind of chicken scratch. And so I'd have to stop, which essentially made me lose the essence of the sentence because I'd have to go back and read the sentence all over again and start all over. So I decided to transcribe them. And so I spent a few weeks, actually a couple months, staying late up at night and just transcribing them into a Word document. And what began to happen was I started to really see my dad's story unfold right before my eyes. And although it was painful for me to see in black and white his story and just the amount of pain that he was holding on to, it also really helped me to grow compassion for my dad's story and to see that, you know what, this isn't about me. It was never about me. This was about my dad's story. This was about a man who was in a great deal of emotional pain. And so it wasn't about me. And so from compassion, I grew forgiveness. And I really began forgiving my dad. And although I had told myself that I had really forgiven my dad in the past, this was a different kind of forgiveness. This was true forgiveness that, again, this wasn't about me. This was about him. And so from that, from compassion and from forgiveness, my heart just opened. It opened wide because after those first 5 years that I cried myself to sleep every night, I got to a point where I stopped. No more tears. The only time I would ever cry was with his journals whenever I read them. I became very strong and hard, and I had an armor about me. But as I grew compassion and I began truly forgiving my father, my heart just was wide open. And I had always really wanted to help people, and I always loved helping people, and I was a very, just a heart-centered person. And in all honesty, a lot of it, I'm sure, especially in the years initially after my dad's suicide, I think my fear was, okay, if I don't help this person, then they're going to commit suicide too, so I better help them. But this was a deep yearning to really reach out and to really help people. So I started connecting the dots of my life, and I realized that although this new aha moment and these, new realizations for me were never going to bring my dad, and it was never going to change my past. But what it could do is between my story and my dad's experience and just everything combined, I could help people. And so I connected the dots, and I decided to become a life coach. And here I am. And another piece of that aspect was that for a long time, I always felt like the challenges that we were faced with, it was kind of like a form of punishment. Like I felt like I was being punished for something. But in fact, that's not the case. When it comes to the most challenging situations in our life, in fact, those happen because they are put there to help us to grow into becoming better people. And sometimes the greatest lessons offer the greatest challenges offer the greatest lessons to be learned. And so that's what I want to talk about today, is just looking at your own past and looking at your challenges that you faced in your life and looking at them in a new light and saying, yes, those were some tough times. Yes, those were some of my darkest times. But what gifts did those bring me? What did I learn about the situation or situations? What has it taught me? And not just on a surface level, but the deep, deep inner part of you. What have you learned? Because chances are you have learned something. You may not know what that is right now, but there is something that you've taken away from that traumatic life experience, or just generally challenging experience, whether it was huge, such as a death or a divorce, or whether it was something smaller. So I just want you to go about your day today and just look at your past in a new light and just say to yourself, what did these challenges give me? What have I learned? What have I taken away? So that's all for today. Again, I am Jody, and I wish you guys a wonderful, amazing day, as well as a week and month and year. Have a good day, guys. Bye.